The penthouse was dark when Philip Walton slid his key into the lock, or tried to. The key wouldn't turn. He tried again, frustration mounting as Tasha's perfume still clung to his 3,000 suit. After 28 years of marriage, Simone had finally done it. She'd changed the locks. But it wasn't until he saw the envelope taped to the door, his name written in her elegant script, that Philip realized this wasn't just about a locked door. Philip's hand trembled slightly as he pulled the envelope free. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind Simone always chose for important correspondence. Inside, a single folded sheet, her handwriting as graceful and controlled as everything else about her. Philip, your belongings are in storage. Unit 247 at Secure Keep on Lexington. Gabriel Lee of Lee & Associates has the key and will coordinate access at your convenience. Please direct all future communication through her office. The marriage is over. The papers will arrive next week. I hope you find what you're looking for. Simone. That was it. No accusations, no tears staining the paper, no rage bleeding through the ink. Just those few lines, each word a nail in the coffin of everything he'd built with her over nearly 3 decades. Philip read it 3 times, standing in the hallway of the building where he'd lived for 15 years, feeling like an intruder. The security guard, Luis, who'd worked the night shift since they moved in, approached cautiously. "Mr. Walton? Is there a problem, sir?" Philip looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. Pity. Luis already knew. Of course he did. Simone would have handled this with her characteristic grace, probably tipped generously, maybe even brought Luis those cookies she baked every Christmas. "No problem, Luis. Just, can you tell me when Mrs. Walton changed the locks?" Luis shifted uncomfortably. "Last Wednesday, sir. She had the building manager handle it, said she was implementing some security upgrades." Last Wednesday. 5 days ago. While Philip had been in Boston, supposedly for a conference, but actually holed up in a suite at the Four Seasons with Tasha. While he'd been ordering room service and pretending he was still in his 30s, his wife of 28 years had been systematically erasing him from their home. Philip pulled out his phone, fingers fumbling slightly as he dialed Simone's number. It rang once, then a recorded message. "The number you have reached has been disconnected." He tried texting. The message showed delivered, but the read receipt never came. She'd blocked him. Simone, who'd never blocked anyone in her life, who prided herself on direct communication and handling conflict with dignity, had simply removed him. "Sir?" Luis's voice was gentle. "Is there somewhere I can call for you? Someone who can help?" Philip wanted to laugh at that. Help with what? Help explaining to this kind man that he'd systematically taken for granted the best woman he'd ever known. That somewhere in the climb from hungry young entrepreneur to billionaire CEO, he'd forgotten that the woman who'd been by his side through every grueling step deserved better than his leftovers. "No, thank you, Luis. I'll figure it out." Philip walked back to the elevator, rode down to the parking garage, and sat in his Tesla for 20 minutes before he could bring himself to start it. Where was he supposed to go? The penthouse had been home for 15 years. Before that, the brownstone in Park Slope where they'd raised Jordan and Maya. Before that, the small apartment in Queens where Simone had painted the walls herself and made spaghetti dinners stretch across 3 nights. He drove to the Hamptons' house. Maybe she was there. Maybe this was some elaborate wake-up call, and she'd be waiting, ready to tell him exactly what a fool he'd been. He'd grovel, he'd apologize, he'd promise to be better. The 3-hour drive gave him too much time to think. His phone buzzed twice. Tasha, wondering why he'd left so abruptly. He ignored both messages. Tasha suddenly seemed exhausting, her constant need for attention and validation, feeling juvenile in a way he hadn't noticed before. Or maybe he had noticed, and that had been part of the appeal. She made him feel young, virile, interesting. Simone had made him feel seen. The house in Southampton was dark, every window blank. Philip used his key, this one still worked, and stepped into the foyer. Everything was immaculate, not a dish out of place, not a piece of furniture disturbed. Simone's touch everywhere in the coastal blues and warm whites she'd chosen, the art they'd collected together on trips to Santa Fe and Savannah and Charleston. But none of her things remained. Her favorite throw blanket, gone from the living room sofa. The mystery novels she kept stacked on her nightstand, gone. The framed photo of them from their 20th anniversary in Tuscany, just a pale square on the wall where it had hung. She'd taken only what was hers, leaving the house intact but somehow emptied, like she'd never been there at all. Like 28 years could be extracted as cleanly as pulling a thread from a tapestry, leaving everything else in place. Philip sank onto the sofa, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, put his face in his hands. Not crying, not yet, but hovering on that edge, feeling the weight of what he'd done settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. His phone buzzed again. Not Tasha this time, but Jordan, his son. "We know, Dad. Mom told us everything. Don't call Maya. She needs space. I need space too. Maybe figure out why you'd throw away everything for whatever that was." So the kids knew. Of course they knew. Simone wouldn't have made this move without talking to them first. She was too considerate, too conscious of how her decisions affected everyone around her. Even when leaving him, she'd thought of others first. How long had she known? The affair with Tasha had been going on for 8 months, careful and discreet. Or so he'd thought. Looking back now, Philip could see the moments where Simone's eyes had lingered on him a bit too long, where her smile had seemed just slightly strained. The night he'd come home late with an excuse about a client dinner, and she'd simply nodded, turning back to her book without comment. She'd known, maybe not the details, but she'd known. And she'd said nothing, done nothing until she was ready. That was Simone, strategic, patient, never acting from emotion alone. It was one of the things that had drawn him to her in the first place. Philip's mind drifted back 29 years to the night that had changed everything. The Riverside Foundation Gala, October 1997. Philip was 28, his investment firm barely 3 years old but already making waves. He'd bought the ticket because networking at charity events was good for business, because potential clients liked to see young executives giving back, because his mentor had insisted. He'd expected a boring evening of rubber chicken and self-congratulatory speeches. Then Simone Carter stepped up to the microphone. She was 25, the youngest executive director in the Riverside Foundation's history. She wore a deep emerald dress that complemented her dark skin, and her hair fell in natural curls around her shoulders. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped him mid-conversation. It was the absolute command in her voice as she spoke. "We talk about investing in communities as if poverty is a stock market. Buy low, hope for returns. But communities aren't portfolios. They're people. They're families who've been systematically divested from for generations. Real investment means showing up. It means long-term commitment. It means understanding that your presence matters as much as your checkbook." She spoke for 12 minutes without notes, making eye contact with different sections of the room, her passion evident but controlled. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, and Philip couldn't look away from her. He found her afterward at the bar, ordering a glass of wine. "That was quite a speech," he'd said, immediately cursing himself for such a generic opening. She'd turned, meeting his eyes with a directness that made his pulse quicken. "Thank you. Let me guess. You're here to write a check and feel good about yourself?" "Guilty," he'd admitted, surprised into honesty. "Though you've made me reconsider my approach." "Good." She'd smiled then, and it transformed her entire face. Discomfort is the beginning of growth. They'd talked for 2 hours. He'd forgotten about networking, about strategic conversations with potential investors. She challenged every assumption he made about wealth and responsibility. She laughed at his jokes, but didn't let him off easy. She was brilliant and passionate and utterly unlike anyone he'd ever met. When he'd asked for her number, she'd hesitated. "I don't date men who see charity as a tax write-off," she'd said. "Then it's good I'm starting to see it as an actual responsibility." He'd meant it. She'd given him her card, professional, not personal. "Prove it. Volunteer at one of our programs, then we'll talk." He'd shown up the next Saturday at a community center in the Bronx, wearing jeans instead of his usual designer casual wear, ready to paint walls with a group of teenagers. Simone had been there, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied back, laughing as she taught a 14-year-old girl how to cut in around window frames. She'd looked over at him, surprise flickering across her face. "You actually came. You challenged me to prove something. I don't back down from challenges. That day, covered in paint, eating pizza with volunteers on the floor of a not-quite-finished community space, Philip had fallen. Not in love, not yet, but into something deeper than attraction. He'd fallen into respect. Their first real date came 2 weeks later. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant in her neighborhood, the kind of place where the owner knew everyone's name. They'd talked until the staff started stacking chairs around them. He'd walked her home in the rain, neither of them having an umbrella, both laughing as they got soaked. At her door, he'd kissed her. She'd kissed him back, and the world had narrowed to just that moment. The rain, her lips, the way she melted against him before pulling back. "This is going somewhere," she'd said, not a question, but a statement. "Yes," he'd agreed. "Then you should know. I don't do casual. I don't do games. If we're doing this, we're doing it for real." He'd cupped her face in his hands, rain dripping down his wrists. "I'll never take you for granted, I promise." She'd believed him. God, she'd believed him. Philip's phone rang, jolting him back to the present. Unknown number. He answered anyway, desperate for anything to fill the silence of the empty house. "Philip Walton?" A woman's voice, professional and brisk. "Yes." "This is Gabrielle Lee. I'm representing Simone in the dissolution of your marriage. I'm calling to coordinate access to your belongings." Gabby. Simone's college roommate, the one who'd gone to law school while Simone got her MBA, the one who'd been maid of honor at their wedding, the one who'd probably wanted to punch him when Simone told her about the affair. "Gabby, I need to talk to Simone." "That's not possible. All communication goes through me now." "Come on. We've known each other for almost 30 years. You were at our wedding. You're Maya's godmother. Can't you—" "Which is exactly why I know how badly you've screwed up, Philip." Gabby's voice was ice. "Simone doesn't want to see you. She doesn't want to talk to you. She wants a clean break. Can you respect that, or do I need to get a restraining order?" The words hit like a slap. "A restraining order? Gabby, I would never—" "Wouldn't you? You already violated her trust in the worst possible way. Why should she believe you'll respect any other boundaries?" Philip closed his eyes. "Just tell me she's okay." "She's better than okay. She's finally free." A pause. "Your belongings are in storage. I'll email you the access information. The divorce papers will be served next week." She's not asking for much, just what's legally hers per the prenup. The one I wrote, by the way, which you should have read more carefully. "I don't care about the money." "You should. Because Simone does. She's taking exactly what she's entitled to, not a penny more or less. That's who she is. Fair even when she has every right to burn your life down." "Gabby, please, I need to explain." "Explain what? That you cheated on your wife of nearly 3 decades with someone young enough to be your daughter? That you lied repeatedly? That you missed your anniversary dinner because you were in bed with your mistress?" Simone knows all of it, Philip. She's known for months. And unlike you, she didn't make rash decisions. She planned. She prepared. She's 3 steps ahead of you, like always. The line went dead. Philip sat in the dark living room, holding his silent phone, understanding for the first time that this wasn't a fight he could win. There would be no grand gesture, no heartfelt apology that would fix this. Simone had made her choice with the same careful deliberation she brought to everything else. He'd lost her, not in the sudden way of death or accident, but in the slow, inevitable way of neglect and betrayal, and taking for granted the one person who'd never given up on him, until she had. 6 months earlier. Simone sat on the edge of the bed she'd shared with Philip for 28 years, holding a hotel receipt she'd found in the pocket of his suit jacket. The 4 Seasons, Boston, 2 nights. The same weekend he'd told her he was staying an extra day for meetings. She'd known, of course, not the specific details, but something had been off for months. The way he looked through her at dinner, the increasing number of late meetings, the new cologne, the careful way he kept his phone face down. Simone was 53 years old. She'd built a career, raised 2 children, supported her husband's rise from hungry entrepreneur to billionaire CEO. She'd attended countless business dinners, smiled through ribbon cuttings and charity galas, been the gracious hostess and devoted wife everyone expected. And now, holding evidence of his betrayal in her shaking hands, she had a choice to make. She could confront him. They could fight. Maybe he'd apologize, promise to do better, and they'd enter that painful territory of broken trust and attempted rebuilding. Or she could do what she'd always been good at, think strategically, plan carefully, and act decisively. Simone picked up her phone and called Gabby. "Hey lady, what's up? Can you meet me tomorrow? I need a lawyer." Gabby's tone shifted immediately. "Are you okay?" "What happened?" "I'm fine. I'm good. But I need to know exactly what my options are, and I need to know what I'm entitled to." Oh, is this about, yes, and Gabby? "I'm not going into this angry or hurt. I'm going in smart. Can you help me with that?" "Honey, I've been waiting for this call for 6 months. Come to my office at 10. We're going to make sure you get everything you deserve." Simone ended the call and placed the receipt carefully in her desk drawer, starting a file she labeled simply, "Evidence." Then she went to the closet and pulled out the metal box where she kept important documents. The prenup was near the bottom. Philip had insisted on it before they married. His business was just starting to take off, and his lawyer had recommended protection. Simone had agreed, but on one condition. Gabby wrote it. She opened to the relevant pages, reading carefully. 28 years ago, Gabby had been fresh out of law school, but already sharp. The prenup protected Philip's business interests, yes, but it also guaranteed Simone significant compensation for any marriage lasting more than 10 years. 15 years meant additional stock options. 25 years triggered substantial real estate holdings. They were at 28 years. And the prenup had one more clause, one Gabby had insisted on, and Philip had agreed to without reading closely. Any infidelity forfeited additional protective measures he might have claimed. Simone did the math. She wouldn't get half. New York wasn't a community property state, and the prenup limited that. But she'd get enough, more than enough to start over, to build something new. She closed the document and took a long breath. The pain was there, sharp and real under her ribs. 28 years, more than half her life. She'd loved him once with everything she had. Maybe she still loved him, or at least loved the man he'd been. But love wasn't enough, not anymore, not when respect was gone. Over the next 6 months, Simone moved with quiet precision. She documented everything, the hotel receipts, the credit card charges, the nights he came home smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. She consolidated her accounts, making sure her own money was separate and protected. She met with Gabby weekly, building her case not for a contested divorce, but for a clean, quick exit. She told Jordan and Maya over lunch at their favorite restaurant, both kids home for the holidays. "Your father and I are separating. The divorce will be final by spring." Maya had cried. Jordan had gotten angry, demanded to know why. Simone had been honest but not cruel. "He's been having an affair. I've decided not to stay in a marriage where I'm not valued. I need you both to know this isn't about you, and I'm not asking you to choose sides. He's still your father, but I'm done being his wife." Both kids had hugged her, told her they loved her, said they understood. Later, she'd overheard Jordan on the phone with Philip, his voice cold and clipped in a way she'd never heard before. Simone had packed her most precious belongings, photographs, jewelry her grandmother had left her, the first edition books she'd collected over the years. She'd arranged for storage of Philip's things, coordinating with building security. She'd changed the locks on a Wednesday afternoon, tipping the locksmith generously. And through it all, Philip had noticed nothing. He'd been too busy with his young mistress, too caught up in whatever fantasy he was living to see his wife quietly dismantling their life together. The night before she changed the locks, Simone had walked through the penthouse one last time. She'd stood in the living room where they'd hosted holiday parties, in the kitchen where she'd made Sunday breakfasts for 30 years, in the bedroom where they'd made love and raised children and built a life. She'd felt sad, but not regret. This was the right choice, the only choice, because Simone Carter had never been the kind of woman to settle for less than she deserved, and she sure as hell wasn't about to start now. Chapter 2. Philip spent his first night as a technically homeless billionaire in a suite at the Park Hyatt. The irony wasn't lost on him. He owned a penthouse, a house in the Hamptons, a condo in Aspen, and yet he had nowhere to go that felt like home. Because home had never been about the properties. It had been about Simone. He didn't sleep. Instead, he sat by the window watching the city lights, replaying every moment of the last year. When had it started? When had he decided that his marriage was something he could gamble with? The affair with Tasha had begun at a gallery opening. She'd been beautiful and funny, and had laughed at all his jokes. She'd made him feel like the most interesting person in the room. When she'd touched his arm, leaning in close to whisper a comment about the pretentious art, he'd felt a thrill he hadn't experienced in years. He'd told himself it was harmless. Just flirtation. Just attention. Everyone needed to feel desired, right? But flirtation became drinks. Drinks became dinner. Dinner became a kiss in the back of a taxi. And then he'd crossed the line he'd promised Simone, promised himself he'd never cross. Tasha had been understanding about his marriage. She'd said she didn't expect him to leave Simone, that she just enjoyed his company. It had seemed perfect, excitement without consequences. He could have both his stable home life and this thrilling secret, except there were always consequences. He'd just been too arrogant to see them coming. At 7 a.m., Philip called Gabby's office. Her assistant answered, cheerful and professional. "I need to speak with Gabrielle Lee. It's urgent." "Ms. Lee has office hours from 9 to 5. I can schedule an appointment. Tell her it's Philip Walton. She'll want to take this call." A pause. "Please hold." 2 minutes passed before Gabby's voice came through, cold as winter. "Philip, I told you last night, all communication goes through my office. During business hours. I need to see Simone." "No. Gabby, please, I know I screwed up. I know I don't deserve—" "You're right. You don't deserve anything. Especially not more of Simone's time and emotional energy. I just need to explain." "Explain what? The hotel receipts? The restaurant charges? The night you told her you were in Chicago when you were actually at the plaza with your mistress?" Gabby's voice could have cut glass. "She has 6 months of evidence, Philip. 6 months of you lying to her face. What could you possibly explain that she doesn't already know?" Philip's throat tightened. "I didn't know she knew." "Of course you didn't. Because you weren't paying attention. You were too busy with your little midlife crisis to notice that your wife was quietly preparing to leave you. Is she okay? Where's she staying?" "She's better than okay. And her location is none of your business. The kids won't return my calls. Can you blame them? You cheated on their mother? You humiliated a woman who's done nothing but support you for 30 years. They're adults, Philip. They get to decide how they feel about that. I want to fix this." "You can't." Gabby's voice softened slightly, but not with kindness, with pity. "That's what you need to understand. This isn't something you can solve with money or charm or some grand gesture. Simone is done. She's not angry anymore. She's not hurt. She's just done. And honestly, that's worse for you." Philip closed his eyes. "Can I at least write her a letter?" "You can do whatever you want, but she's under no obligation to read it." "Will you give it to her?" A long pause. "If you write something genuinely apologetic, not making excuses, not asking for forgiveness, just genuinely taking responsibility, I'll pass it along. But Philip, don't expect a response. Don't expect anything. Just let her go." The call ended. Philip sat with his phone, staring at a blank email screen. What could he possibly say? Sorry seemed inadequate. Sorry was what you said when you bumped into someone on the subway, not when you'd betrayed the fundamental trust of a marriage. He started typing anyway. The meeting with Gabby happened 3 days later in her office in Midtown. Philip had expected hostility. What he got was worse. Cold professionalism. Gabby sat behind her desk, hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a charcoal suit that meant business. "Let's keep this brief. You need access to your belongings. I have the key to the storage unit and a full inventory of what's there. Sign the log and you can retrieve your things at your convenience." "That's it? What else did you expect? A therapy session?" Philip leaned forward. "Gabby, we've known each other for 30 years. Can't we at least—" "We've known each other for 30 years, which is exactly why I know you don't get to play the friendship card now. I watched you fall in love with my best friend. I was thrilled when you proposed. I thought you were one of the good ones." She shuffled papers on her desk. "Turns out I was wrong. I made a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is snapping at your wife when you're stressed. An affair is a series of deliberate choices. You chose to meet that woman. You chose to lie. You chose to book hotel rooms. You chose over and over to betray Simone. Philip felt the words land like punches. I know. You're right. But Gabby, I love her. I always have. Really? Because love looks different than what you showed. Love is showing up. Love is honoring your promises. Love is seeing your partner as a person, not just as furniture in your very successful life. That's not fair. Fair? Gabby's laugh was sharp. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how Simone spent 6 months documenting your affair while pretending everything was fine because she needed time to plan her exit properly. Let's talk about how she cried exactly once in my office, then pulled herself together and got down to business. Let's talk about how she insisted on only taking what's rightfully hers, even though we both know she could bury you in litigation if she wanted. Philip's hands clenched. I never wanted to hurt her. And yet you did, repeatedly, for 8 months. Gabby slid a folder across the desk. Here's the inventory of your belongings. The storage unit is climate-controlled. Your suits are in garment bags. Your electronics are boxed properly. Because even when leaving you, Simone made sure your stuff was handled with care. That's who she is. Philip opened the folder, seeing page after page of itemized belongings. His clothes, his books, his golf clubs, the mundane accumulation of a life, now cataloged and stored like evidence. The divorce papers will be served next week, Gabby continued. It's uncontested. Simone is asking for what's outlined in the prenup. Nothing more, nothing less. She's not trying to hurt you financially, Philip. She's just claiming what's hers and moving on. What about the house in Southampton? Yours. It was purchased before the marriage and isn't covered under joint assets. The penthouse? Also yours, though you might want to consider selling it. Too many memories. Philip looked up at her. Is she seeing anyone? Gabby's expression didn't change. That's not your concern anymore. Gabby, please. No, you don't get to know about her life now. You gave up that right. She stood, indicating the meeting was over. Sign the storage access log. Take your things. Move on with your life. Let Simone move on with hers. Philip signed the document with shaking hands. Can you at least tell her I'm sorry? Write it in your letter. Though honestly, Philip, she doesn't need your apology. She's already forgiven you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger around would weigh her down. That's the kind of person she is. Gracious even when you didn't earn it. Walking out of Gabby's office, Philip felt the full weight of what he'd lost. Not just a wife, but a partner. Not just a marriage, but a friendship. Simone had been his best friend for 30 years, and he'd treated her like an option rather than a priority. His phone buzzed. Tasha, asking when she'd see him again. He stared at the message, seeing it clearly for the first time. The neediness, the assumption that he'd drop everything for her. The complete lack of understanding about what his life actually entailed. He typed back, "This isn't going to work. I'm sorry." Her response came immediately. "Are you serious? You're choosing your wife? After everything?" Philip almost laughed. Choosing his wife. As if that's what he was doing. As if Simone was sitting somewhere waiting for him to choose her. She wasn't. She'd chosen herself. And he'd lost the privilege of being her choice. "I'm not choosing anyone. We're done. Please don't contact me again." He blocked her number, feeling nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction. Just a hollow recognition that the affair had never been about Tasha. It had been about his ego, his fear of aging, his need to prove he could still attract attention. And in chasing that validation, he'd thrown away the one relationship that had actually mattered. Philip moved back into the penthouse a week later, once he'd retrieved enough of his belongings from storage. The place felt cavernous without Simone's presence. Her side of the closet was empty. Her bathroom counter, once cluttered with the products of her morning routine, was bare. The kitchen lacked the fresh flowers she always kept on the counter. He'd never noticed how much of the warmth in their home had come from her. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday via courier. Philip signed them at his desk, his secretary witnessing the signature. She didn't ask questions, but her sympathetic look told him she'd heard through the office grapevine. Everyone knew, of course everyone knew, his affair, Simone leaving him. It was the kind of gossip that traveled fast in their social circle. That night, Philip attended a business dinner he couldn't get out of. The moment he walked into the restaurant, he felt the shift in energy. Conversations paused, eyes followed him, the whispers were barely concealed. His dinner companions were cordial but distant. One of them, David Lee, no relation to Gabby, though the coincidence felt like cosmic irony, brought up Simone. "Heard you and Simone are separating. That's unfortunate. She's a remarkable woman." "Yes, she is. My wife's on the board of the Riverside Foundation with her. Says Simone's been invaluable these past few years. Real vision for community investment." Philip hadn't known Simone was still involved with Riverside. That's where they'd met, but he'd assumed she'd moved on from nonprofit work years ago. "I didn't realize she was still active there." David's eyebrows rose. "Active? She's been the strategic advisor for 5 years, helped them triple their impact. Thought you'd know. You're listed as a major donor, or were. I heard your name's been removed from this year's gala invitation committee." The realization hit like cold water. Simone had quietly been involved in major charitable work, and he'd been too absorbed in his own world to notice, and now, because of his actions, he was being removed from circles she'd worked to include him in. "I've been busy with the business." "Sure." David's tone suggested he knew exactly how Philip had been busy. "Well, if you want back in with Riverside, you'll need to rebuild some bridges. Simone's got a lot of respect in that community. People follow her lead." The message was clear. Simone's social capital was real and extensive, and Philip, by betraying her, had damaged his own standing in ways he hadn't begun to comprehend. The rest of dinner was excruciating. Every smile felt forced. Every laugh rang hollow. Philip left early, claiming a headache, and drove home through streets that felt unfamiliar despite having traveled them 1,000 times. At home, he poured a scotch and sat in the living room, looking at the pale square on the wall where their Tuscany photo had hung. 20 years ago, anniversary trip, they'd rented a villa in Chianti, spent 2 weeks eating incredible food and drinking local wine and remembering why they'd fallen in love in the first place. Philip pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. There she was, laughing in a vineyard, her sundress moving in the breeze. And there, at the kids' college graduations, proud and beautiful. And there, at his 45th birthday party, caught mid-laugh at something Jordan had said. When had he stopped seeing her? When had the woman who'd been his everything become just another part of the background of his life? He couldn't pinpoint a moment. It had been gradual, like erosion. Success had come, and with it, demands on his time. More travel, more meetings, more pressure to maintain and grow the business. Simone had been understanding, supportive. She'd never complained about his late nights or missed dinners. He'd taken that understanding as permission to prioritize everything else. His mistake had been assuming her grace was infinite. 4 months after the separation, Simone walked into her new brownstone apartment in Brooklyn Heights, arms full of groceries. The place was smaller than the penthouse, but it was hers, just hers. She'd decorated it slowly, deliberately, choosing each piece with care rather than hiring a designer. The living room had large windows overlooking tree-lined streets. Her bedroom was painted a soft gray that changed with the light. The kitchen was compact but functional, perfect for the cooking she'd rediscovered over the past few months. Her phone rang as she unpacked vegetables. Jordan's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, sweetie." "Mom, just checking in. How's the new place?" "Perfect. Quiet. I had my first dinner party last night. Just Gabby and a few friends from the foundation. It felt good." "That's great. Really great." A pause. "Dad's been calling." Simone's hand stilled on the counter. "You don't have to talk about him with me. Your relationship with your father is yours." "I know, but I thought you should know. He's not doing well." "What do you mean?" "He looks terrible. Lost weight. The business is fine, but socially." "Mom, people are shutting him out. Not overtly, but you know how it works." Simone did know. Their social circle was tightly knit, built on relationships she'd cultivated over decades. Philip had benefited from her connections without realizing how much of their social standing depended on her reputation. "How do you feel about that?" she asked carefully. "Honestly, part of me thinks he deserves it. He did this to himself." Jordan's voice was conflicted. "But he's still my dad. And seeing him this lost is weird. He keeps asking about you. What does he ask? If you're okay. If you're seeing anyone. If you ever mention him. Jordan hesitated. Are you? Seeing anyone, I mean? Simone thought of Vincent Leroux, the French restaurateur she'd met at the community kitchen where she'd started volunteering. He was kind and funny and refreshingly straightforward. They'd had coffee twice. He'd invited her to a cooking class at his restaurant. I'm focusing on myself right now, she said, which was true even if incomplete. Good. You deserve that. You deserve everything good. After they hung up, Simone finished putting away groceries, thinking about Philip. She didn't want him to suffer, but she also didn't want to go back. That version of her life was over, and she didn't mourn it. For the first time in decades, Simone was building a life entirely on her own terms. No one to consider but herself, no schedule to work around but her own, no compromises that left her feeling diminished. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. That evening, she met Vincent at his bistro, Leroux. The restaurant was intimate, maybe 30 tables, with exposed brick and warm lighting. Vincent greeted her at the door, his smile genuine. Simone, welcome, welcome. I've saved you the best seat, kitchen view, she laughed. That's the best seat? In my restaurant? Absolute mint. Food is theater. You should see the show. He led her to a small table positioned so she could watch the kitchen line. The energy was controlled chaos, chefs calling orders, flames jumping from pans, plates being assembled with precision. Vincent brought wine and sat across from her. So, the cooking class, are you coming, or did you decide I'm too pushy? You're not pushy, and yes, I'm coming, though I should warn you I'm not a natural cook. Neither was I. My mother despaired of me. Burned water, as you Americans say. His accent thickened with amusement. But cooking is like anything else. You learn, you practice, you get better. And mostly, you enjoy the process. They talked easily, their conversation ranging from food to travel to the volunteer work that had brought them together. Vincent had lost his wife to cancer 2 years ago. He spoke of her with warmth, but without the raw pain that had been there earlier. Marie would like you, he said. She always said I needed friends who would challenge me. You challenge assumptions, yes? I see this in how you work with people at the kitchen. I spent my whole marriage being agreeable, Simone admitted. I'm rediscovering my opinions. Good. Opinions are necessary. Otherwise, we're just... He waved his hand vaguely. Furniture in someone else's life. The phrase struck her. Furniture. That's exactly what she'd become. Functional, expected to be there, rarely truly noticed. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me as a person, not as someone's wife. Vincent reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. You are very easy to see, Simone. The real mystery is how anyone could look at you and see anything else. She felt warmth spread through her chest, not the desperate flutter of new infatuation, but something steadier. Interest. Possibility. The gentle opening of a door she'd thought was permanently closed. When Vincent walked her to her car later, the October air crisp and clear, he kissed her cheek in the European manner. The cooking class is next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Don't be late. We're making coq au vin, and it's unforgiving. I'll be there. Driving home, Simone caught herself smiling. Not because of Vincent specifically, though he was lovely, but because she was making choices that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. She was rediscovering joy in small things, good conversation, new experiences, the pleasure of her own company. Philip had given her an unexpected gift by betraying her. He'd forced her to choose herself. And now, for the first time in decades, she was building a life that belonged entirely to her. Chapter 3. Philip stood outside Leroux on a Friday night, ostensibly there for a business dinner with potential investors. The reservation had been made by his assistant, who'd chosen the restaurant for its reputation and intimate atmosphere, perfect for the kind of conversation where deals were sealed over good wine. He hadn't known Simone would be there, but the moment he walked in, he saw her. She was at a corner table, candlelight catching the silver threaded through her locks in a way that made her look luminous. She wore a burgundy dress he'd never seen before, her laugh carrying across the room with genuine delight, and across from her sat a man, older distinguished, with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. The man was leaning forward, completely focused on Simone, his hand covering hers on the table in a gesture that spoke of comfort and familiarity. Philip stopped so abruptly that the hostess nearly ran into him. "Mr. Walton, your party is already seated. Right this way." He followed mechanically, allowing himself to be led to a table with sightlines to where Simone sat. His dining companions, David and Jennifer Morrison, investors considering a large stake in his firm, were already sipping wine. "Philip, good to see you." David stood to shake hands. "We were just talking about the quarterly projections. Impressive numbers." Philip sat, forcing himself to focus, but his attention kept drifting to Simone's table. She hadn't noticed him yet, too absorbed in conversation with her companion. The man said something that made her laugh again, and the sound was like a knife twisting in Philip's chest. He'd almost forgotten what her real laugh sounded like. Not the polite social laugh she'd perfected over years of business dinners and charity events, but the genuine, full-throated sound of actual joy. Jennifer followed his gaze. "Isn't that Simone Carter? God, I haven't seen her in ages. She looks amazing." "She does," David agreed. "That's Vincent LaRue she's with. Owns this place. Interesting guy. Lost his wife a couple years back. Does a lot of community work. Donates meals to shelters, that kind of thing." Philip's jaw tightened. "You know him?" "Met him at a non-profit event. Simone introduced us, actually. They're on some board together." David paused, recognition dawning. "Oh, right. You and Simone are—" "I'm sorry, Philip. That's awkward." "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Nothing about watching another man make his wife, ex-wife, soon to be officially, laugh was fine. Dinner was torture. Philip tried to focus on the Morrisons' questions about portfolio diversity and market positioning, but his mind kept wandering to the table across the room. He watched Vincent order for both of them with ease, watched Simone lean in to listen, watched the casual intimacy of two people comfortable with each other. At one point, Vincent brushed Simone's cheek with his fingertips, wiping away what might have been a crumb or maybe nothing at all. Just an excuse to touch her. And Simone smiled at him with a softness Philip hadn't seen directed at him in years. "Philip?" Jennifer's voice broke through his distraction. "The risk assessment?" "Sorry, what?" "We were asking about your risk assessment strategies. Given the market volatility—" Philip pulled himself back to the conversation, answering their questions with practiced competence, but his heart wasn't in it. His heart was breaking quietly, watching Simone live a life that didn't include him. When Vincent brought out dessert, something chocolate beautifully plated, he didn't sit back down immediately. Instead, he bent to whisper something in Simone's ear, making her blush. Actually blush. Then he kissed her temple before returning to the kitchen. The gesture was so tender, so natural, that Philip felt physically sick. "Excuse me," he managed. "I need to take a call." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his water glass, and headed for the exit. Behind him, he heard David's confused voice. "Was it something we said?" Outside, the November air was cold enough to bite. Philip leaned against the building, trying to steady his breathing. This was what loss felt like. Not the abstract realization that his marriage was over, but the concrete reality of watching Simone be happy without him, with someone else, someone who was probably better for her than Philip had been. His phone vibrated. A text from his assistant. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison wanted to know if everything's all right. Should I reschedule?" Philip stared at the message. He'd just walked out on major investors, the kind of investors who could make or break his next venture, and he'd done it because he couldn't handle watching his ex-wife on a date. He typed back, "Send my apologies, family emergency, we'll follow up Monday." It was a lie, but what was one more lie in the grand scheme of things? Philip walked to his car, drove home to the empty penthouse, and sat in the dark living room, finally letting himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. Not just the affair, not just the betrayal, but the years of neglect that had led there, the slow erosion of a partnership that had once been everything. Simone had moved on. She was building a new life with someone who probably appreciated her, who probably paid attention, who probably didn't take her for granted. And Philip was here, alone in a museum of memories, surrounded by evidence of a life he'd destroyed through his own carelessness. His phone rang. Jordan again. "Hey, Dad. Maya told me about the Morrisons. Are you okay? I saw your mother tonight at a restaurant. She was with someone." Silence then. "Yeah, Vincent. He's a good guy. You've met him? Last month, Mom had us over for dinner at her place. Vincent brought wine and made some kind of French chicken thing. Actually, Dad, he's really nice. Maya liked him. I liked him." Philip closed his eyes. "Good. That's good." "Are you okay?" Jordan asked again. "No, but I will be. I have to be." Philip took a breath. "How is she? Your mother?" "Happy. Like, genuinely happy. It's weird. I didn't realize how much she'd been pretending before. With Vincent, she's different. Lighter." That was the final twist of the knife. Simone hadn't just replaced him. She'd found something better. "I'm glad," Philip said, and meant it. "She deserves to be happy." "She does. And Dad, you deserve to be happy too. But you need to figure your shit out first. See a therapist. Do some real work on yourself. Because what you did to Mom, you can't do that to anyone else. Ever." "I know." "Do you? Because I need to know you actually understand how badly you screwed up. Not just that you're sorry, but that you understand why it was wrong." Philip thought about that. The easy answer was that cheating was wrong, that he'd broken his vows, that he'd hurt Simone. But Jordan was asking for something deeper. "I treated her like she was part of the furniture," Philip said slowly, "like she'd always be there no matter what I did. I stopped seeing her as a person with her own needs and dreams. I made our marriage about me and my success, and I forgot that a partnership requires actual participation." "Yeah," Jordan's voice softened. "That's it exactly. You stopped being her partner. You became just the guy who lived there and occasionally showed up for family dinners." "I didn't mean to." "I know, but impact matters more than intent. You need to remember that going forward." After they hung up, Philip sat with those words, impact versus intent. He'd never meant to hurt Simone, but his actions had devastated her regardless, and now she was rebuilding without him, finding happiness with someone who probably did all the things Philip had stopped doing years ago, someone who paid attention, who showed up, who saw her. Philip pulled out his laptop and typed a search. "Therapists near me, specializing in infidelity." It was time to do the work Jordan had mentioned, not to win Simone back. That ship had sailed, and he could finally see that clearly, but to understand how he'd become the kind of man who could hurt someone he loved so deeply. He booked an appointment for Tuesday morning. It felt like a small step, but it was something, a beginning. The cooking class was everything Simone hadn't known she needed. 6 people gathered in LaRue's kitchen on a Wednesday night, aprons tied, watching Vincent demonstrate how to properly sear chicken pieces for coq au vin. The skin must be crispy, yes? This is not negotiable. Soggy chicken is a tragedy. Vincent's accent made even the word soggy sound charming. Simone stood at her station next to a younger woman named Priya, who admitted she'd signed up to impress her boyfriend's French mother. "Big mistake," Priya whispered. "His mother makes Julia Child look like an amateur." "Then we'll have to make this absolutely perfect," Simone whispered back. The class was hands-on, Vincent circulating between stations to offer guidance, correct technique, and provide encouragement. When he reached Simone's station, he paused. "Ah, look at this. Perfect browning. You're a natural. You're just saying that because you like me. I'm saying that because it's true. Though yes, I do like you." He smiled. "Your sauce needs more wine. That's your solution to everything. This is France's solution to everything. We've had centuries to perfect it." After the chicken was braised and the kitchen smelled like garlic and wine and thyme, Vincent served the finished dishes family style, everyone gathering around one long table. Wine flowed, conversations overlapped, and Simone found herself laughing at stories about kitchen disasters and culinary ambitions. This felt right. This felt like living, not just existing. For too many years, her social life had been about Philip's business contacts, carefully curated events where she performed the role of the supportive wife. This was different. Real people, genuine connection, no performance required. Vincent sat beside her, their shoulders touching in the casual way of people comfortable with each other. "You're glowing," he said quietly. "This suits you." "What does?" "Being yourself. No apologies, no holding back. Just Simone." She looked at him, this man who'd known her for only a few months but seemed to see her clearly. Thank you for this, for the class, for your friendship, for reminding me what joy feels like. You deserve joy. And friendship, yes, but also, he hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. Would you be interested in more than friendship? Because I am. Very interested. But only if you are ready. No pressure. Simone's heart fluttered, not with fear, but with possibility. Vincent was offering something Philip had stopped offering years ago, a choice. Not an assumption that she'd be there, but an invitation she could accept or decline. I'm interested, she said, and I'm ready. He smiled, the kind of smile that crinkled his entire face. Good. Then we should have dinner, not here at my restaurant, somewhere else where I can focus entirely on you and not worry about the kitchen burning down. I'd like that. Later, walking to her car, Vincent held her hand. It felt natural, like something they'd been doing for years rather than minutes. At her car, he kissed her, not her cheek this time, but her lips, soft, questioning, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't want to. The kiss was sweet and tender, without the urgency of new passion, but with something deeper. Promise. Potential. The gentle beginning of something real. I'll call you tomorrow, Vincent said. We'll plan our date properly, somewhere wonderful. Driving home, Simone felt lighter than she had in years. She wasn't completely over Philip. 30 years of history couldn't be erased in a few months, but she was moving forward, building something new, discovering that life after heartbreak could still hold beauty and joy and possibility. Her phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Maya. Dad saw you at Vincent's restaurant. He's a mess. Just thought you should know. Simone stared at the message, feeling a complicated tangle of emotions, sympathy for Philip's pain, relief that she was no longer responsible for managing his emotions, and underneath it all, a quiet satisfaction that he finally understood what he'd lost. She typed back, I hope he finds his way, but that's not my responsibility anymore. Maya's response was immediate. Good, you deserve better. Vincent seems great, by the way. Jordan and I approve. That made Simone smile. Her children's approval meant everything, not because she needed permission, but because she wanted them to see her happy, to understand that leaving a marriage that no longer served her wasn't failure. It was strength. A week later, Philip found himself at his therapist's office for the fourth time. Dr. Patricia Wen was in her 60s, with kind eyes and zero tolerance for bullshit. You saw her with someone else, Dr. Wen said, not a question. Yes, at his restaurant. They looked happy. And how did that make you feel? Philip had learned that Dr. Wen wouldn't accept simple answers. She pushed him to dig deeper, to examine not just what he felt, but why. Jealous, angry, lost, he paused. Relieved. Relieved? She's okay. Better than okay. For months I've been worried that I destroyed her. But she's building a life. She's moving on. Part of me is relieved that my mistakes didn't break her. That's growth, Dr. Wen said approvingly. You're beginning to separate her well-being from your guilt. That's important work. But I still miss her. I still want to fix this. Philip, we've talked about this. You can't fix it. The marriage is over. Simone has moved on. The question is, what are you going to do now? Are you going to spend the rest of your life mourning what you lost, or are you going to learn from this and become a better person? How do I do that? By understanding what led you to make those choices, by examining your relationship with power and control and validation, by figuring out why you thought you deserved to have everything, a devoted wife and an exciting affair, without consequences. Philip winced. You don't pull punches. You're not paying me to coddle you. You're paying me to help you change. And change requires honesty even when it's uncomfortable. They spent the rest of the session examining Philip's childhood, his father's similar pattern of infidelity, his mother's resigned acceptance, the unspoken message that successful men were entitled to whatever they wanted. It was uncomfortable work, dragging up memories and patterns he'd spent decades ignoring. But it was necessary. Because Dr. Wen was right. He couldn't fix his marriage. That was over. But he could fix himself. He could become the kind of man who didn't hurt the people he loved. Homework, Dr. Wen said as their session ended. Write a letter to Simone, not to send, just for yourself. In it, take full responsibility for your actions. No excuses, no, but I was stressed, or the marriage had problems. Just honest accountability. What good will that do? It will help you see clearly what you did and why it was wrong. Most people who cheat spend years rationalizing their behavior. The letter will cut through those rationalizations. That night, Philip sat at his desk with a blank document open. He started typing. Simone, I cheated on you. I lied to you. I betrayed your trust and disrespected our marriage. I did these things not because you weren't enough, but because I was selfish. I wanted the stability and companionship you provided, while also wanting the excitement and validation of being desired by someone new. I wanted to feel young and interesting and desired. I told myself our marriage had grown stale, that you didn't pay attention to me anymore, that we'd become roommates rather than lovers. But the truth is, I'd stopped investing in us. I'd stopped making you a priority. I'd stopped seeing you as a person with needs and desires of your own. You became furniture in my life, always there, functional, expected. And when you started pulling away, which I see now you were doing slowly over years, I blamed you rather than examining my own behavior. The affair was about my ego, about proving I could still attract someone, about feeling powerful and desired. It had nothing to do with Tasha specifically and everything to do with my own insecurities about aging and relevance. I hurt you deeply. I embarrassed you. I took for granted 30 years of partnership and loyalty. I expected you to stay no matter what I did because I'd convinced myself that you'd always be there. That was arrogant and cruel. You deserved a partner who showed up, who paid attention, who valued your presence, who honored the promises he made. I stopped being that person, if I ever truly was. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm sorry for the years I wasted. I'm sorry that my actions have cost us both the future we might have had. You were right to leave. You were right to choose yourself. I hope you find everything you're looking for with someone who appreciates what they have. Philip. He read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. This was the truth, stripped of all the rationalizations and excuses he'd been telling himself. This was the ugly reality of what he'd done and why. Dr. Wen was right. Seeing it laid out so starkly was painful. But it was also clarifying. He couldn't change the past, but he could acknowledge it fully and use that understanding to be better going forward. Philip saved the document, then opened a new email to Dr. Wen, attaching the letter. This was harder than I expected. Thank you for pushing me to do it. Her response came an hour later. Good work. Accountability is painful, but it's also the only path to real change. See you next week. Chapter 4. 3 months into therapy, Philip was becoming someone he barely recognized, not in a bad way, in a necessary way. He'd started reading books Dr. Wen recommended about emotional intimacy and accountability. He'd cut back his work hours, delegating more to his executive team. He'd reconnected with old friends he'd neglected, having honest conversations about his failures. And slowly, painfully, he was building a life that didn't revolve around either his business or his regrets. Maya's engagement party was on a Saturday in April. Simone was hosting it at her brownstone. Philip knew this because Maya had texted him the address with a simple message. Mom says you're welcome to come. Your choice. He'd agonized over the decision for days. Seeing Simone in her new home, in her new life, felt like voluntarily walking into emotional warfare. But Maya was his daughter, and missing her engagement party because he was uncomfortable would be another failure in a long line of them. So he went. The brownstone was in Brooklyn Heights, a tree-lined street that felt worlds away from Manhattan's concrete intensity. Philip stood outside for a full minute before gathering the courage to knock. Jordan answered, his expression carefully neutral. Dad, you came. I wouldn't miss Maya's party. Good. Jordan stepped aside. Mom's in the kitchen. Vincent's helping her. Just be cool, okay? Philip nodded, stepping into a space that was unmistakably Simone's. Warm earth tones, comfortable furniture that invited you to actually sit, art on the walls that reflected her taste rather than some designer's vision. The home they'd shared had been beautiful but sterile. This place felt alive. The sound of laughter drew him toward the kitchen. He found Simone there, wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair pulled back as she arranged appetizers on serving platters. Vincent stood beside her, chopping vegetables with professional efficiency, saying something in French that made her laugh. She looked radiant, younger somehow, despite the silver in her hair and the fine lines around her eyes. Happy in a way Philip couldn't remember seeing in years. Simone looked up and saw him. Her smile didn't fade, but it shifted, became more reserved, more careful. "Philip, I'm glad you could make it. Thank you for having me." He nodded to Vincent. "Vincent." "Philip." Vincent's tone was polite but not warm. He moved slightly closer to Simone, a protective gesture that was subtle but clear. Maya burst into the kitchen then, saving them all from awkward conversation. "Dad, you're here!" She hugged him tightly. "Come meet James's parents. They're in the living room and they're hilarious." She dragged Philip away, leaving Simone and Vincent in the kitchen. Philip glanced back once to see Vincent's hand on the small of Simone's back, her body leaning slightly into his touch. The casual intimacy of it was like a punch to the gut. The party was everything Maya would have wanted, intimate, joyful, filled with people who genuinely cared about her. James's parents were indeed hilarious, regaling everyone with stories of their son's disastrous first attempt at cooking dinner for Maya. Friends from college shared embarrassing anecdotes. Jordan gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying simultaneously. And through it all, Philip watched Simone move through her home with grace and warmth, the perfect hostess. But this time, she wasn't performing. This time, she was genuinely enjoying herself, laughing at jokes, embracing friends, glowing with pride for their daughter. Vincent stayed close but not overbearing, helping refill drinks, clearing plates, fitting seamlessly into the gathering. When someone asked how they'd met, Simone told the story with warmth in her voice. "We met at a community kitchen. I was volunteering, trying to figure out who I was outside of being a wife and mother. Vincent was donating meals. We got to talking about food and second chances, and..." She smiled at him. "Here we are." "Second chances," Vincent agreed, raising his glass to her. "Sometimes the best chapters come after the hardest endings." Philip felt the words like an arrow. His ending had been Simone's beginning. His loss had created the space for her to find something better. Later, as the party wound down and guests began leaving, Philip found himself on the small back patio, needing air. The April evening was cool but not cold, the garden showing signs of Simone's touch, herbs in planters, flowers beginning to bloom. The door opened behind him. Simone stepped out, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. "Thought you might want this." She offered him a cup. "Thank you." He took it, their fingers brushing briefly. "It's a beautiful home. It's mine. That makes it beautiful." She leaned against the railing, looking out at the small garden. "I'm glad you came today. It meant a lot to Maya. I almost didn't. I wasn't sure I could handle seeing you so happy." Simone looked at him then, really looked at him. "You look different, thinner, tired." "I'm in therapy, doing the work I should have done years ago." "That's good, really good." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 30 years between them. "He seems like a good man," Philip said finally. "Vincent?" "He is. He's kind and present and he sees me. Really sees me. I stopped seeing you. Somewhere along the way, I just stopped." "I know." Simone's voice was soft but not unkind. "I felt invisible for years, Philip. I would get dressed up for events, and you wouldn't notice. I would accomplish things at the foundation, and you wouldn't ask. I started pulling away because it hurt too much to keep reaching for someone who wasn't reaching back. I'm sorry. I know you are. But Philip, here's what I need you to understand. Your apology doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the years of neglect or the betrayal. It's for you, not for me. I've already forgiven you, not because you earned it, but because holding on to anger was weighing me down." Philip felt tears prick his eyes. "Do you ever think about what we had? The good years? Of course, we had many good years. We built a life together. We have 2 incredible children. Those things are real and valuable." She paused. "But we also had years that weren't good. Years where we were just going through the motions. I think we both knew the marriage was dying, but neither of us wanted to admit it. I didn't want it to die. No, you wanted it to stay comfortable and convenient while you pursued excitement elsewhere. That's not the same thing as fighting for us. The truth of that stung. You're right. I know I am. Simone took a sip of her coffee. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful, actually. You forced my hand. You made me choose myself. And that choice led me here. To this home. To this life. To Vincent. I wouldn't have had the courage to leave if you hadn't made it impossible to stay. So I did you a favor? The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. In a way, yes, though I'm sure that's not how you intended it. She turned to face him fully. Philip, what are you looking for from me? Absolution? Permission to move on? Confirmation that you're not a monster? I don't know. Maybe all of those things. Then hear this. You're not a monster. You're a flawed human who made selfish choices and hurt people you loved. You're also someone who's apparently doing the hard work of changing. Those things can both be true. She set down her cup. But I can't give you absolution. That has to come from yourself. And you don't need my permission to move on. You need to give yourself that permission. How do I do that? The same way I did. One day at a time, one choice at a time, building a life that honors who you want to become, not who you've been. Vincent appeared at the door. Simone, the last guests are leaving. They want to say goodbye. I'll be right there. She touched Philip's arm briefly. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for being civil. Maya appreciates it, and so do I. She went inside, leaving Philip alone on the patio. He stayed there for a long time, watching the light fade from the sky, thinking about everything she'd said. She'd forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because she refused to let his choices define her life. That was the difference between them. Simone had always been better at letting go, at choosing peace over anger. Philip knew he needed to learn that same skill, not just for Simone's sake, but for his own. It was nearly midnight when Philip finally left, having said goodbye to Maya and James, congratulated them again, avoided making things awkward. He walked to his car, parked 2 blocks away, and sat behind the wheel for a long time. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is James's mother, Caroline. I got your number from Maya. I hope that's okay. Philip frowned, confused. Of course. Is everything all right? Yes, wonderful party. I wanted to say something to you, but didn't get the chance. I've been where you are, watching your ex move on, feeling like you've lost everything. It's brutal. But it gets better. If you do the work, if you're honest with yourself, it gets better. How did you know? I recognized the look in your eyes when you watched Simone and Vincent. I wore that same look at my daughter's wedding, watching my ex-husband with his new wife. But that was 10 years ago. Now I'm remarried to someone wonderful, and my ex and I are friendly. Time and work heal most wounds. Thank you for saying that. One more thing. Simone told me you're in therapy. Keep going, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's how you become someone new. Philip stared at the message, feeling an unexpected surge of hope. Maybe he wasn't doomed to spend the rest of his life mourning what he'd lost. Maybe, with enough work and time and honesty, he could build something new. He drove home, but instead of going to the empty penthouse, he found himself driving to his office. It was late, the building nearly empty, but he had keys and access. He rode the elevator to the top floor, walked into his corner office overlooking the city, and sat at his desk. For the first time in months, he felt something other than regret. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward that didn't involve living in the past. He pulled up his calendar and looked at the upcoming weeks. Too many meetings, too much travel, too little time for anything resembling a life. He started canceling, delegating, rearranging. If he was going to become someone new, he needed space to actually do it. An email notification popped up. Dr. Wen, responding to a question he'd asked earlier about forgiveness. Philip, forgiveness isn't an event, it's a process. You've spent months asking yourself what you can do to earn Simone's forgiveness. But here's what you need to understand. She's already forgiven you. The question now is whether you can forgive yourself. That's harder, and it's more important, because you can't build a new life while constantly punishing yourself for the old one. Philip read the message 3 times. Could he forgive himself? He wasn't sure. But maybe that was the next step in this journey, learning to live with what he'd done without letting it define everything he'd become. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Philip found himself at the hotel bar where he'd once met Tasha. He wasn't there for her. That chapter was long closed. He was there because he couldn't sleep, because the penthouse felt suffocating, because sometimes movement felt better than stillness, even if you had nowhere particular to go. He ordered a scotch and sat at the bar, watching late-night travelers come and go. Business people on red eyes, couples in evening wear returning from events, the staff moving with practiced efficiency through the after-midnight crowd. Then he saw her. Simone, walking through the lobby in a black cocktail dress, heels in one hand, looking tired but elegant. She hadn't seen him yet, heading straight for the elevators. Philip was up and moving before he could talk himself out of it. Simone, she turned, surprise flickering across her face. Philip? What are you doing here? Couldn't sleep. You? Book launch party for Gabby's wife. It ran late. She studied him. You look like hell. Thanks, you look beautiful. Philip, I'm not trying anything, He gestured helplessly. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? Simone hesitated, glancing at the elevators, then back at him. 1 drink, that's it. They sat in a quiet corner of the lobby, comfortable chairs positioned around a low table. A server brought Simone a glass of wine and Philip another scotch. Vincent's not here? Philip asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. He had an early morning at the restaurant. I took a car service. She sipped her wine. How was the rest of your evening after Maya's party? Honestly, hard. Seeing you in your element, so clearly happy. It drove home what I gave up. That wasn't my intention. I didn't invite you to torture you. I know. Maya wanted me there, and you were gracious enough to allow it. But Simone, being there, seeing you like that, he set down his drink, his hands shaking slightly. I destroyed the best thing in my life. I know that now. I understand it in a way I didn't 6 months ago. Good. Understanding is important. I thought I could have everything, you, the life we'd built, and also the excitement of something new. I told myself I deserved it because I'd worked hard, because I'd provided for our family, because I was arrogant and entitled and stupid. Simone watched him carefully, saying nothing. The affair wasn't about you not being enough, Philip continued. It was about me being broken in ways I didn't understand. My father cheated on my mother. I watched her accept it, watched her pretend everything was fine. I absorbed that message, that successful men got to do whatever they wanted, that wives were supposed to understand. Your father's choices don't excuse yours. I know, I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to explain how I got so lost. He ran a hand through his hair. Dr. Wen, my therapist. She's been helping me see the patterns, the entitlement, the way I compartmentalized, the belief that rules didn't apply to me. Are you telling me this because you want something from me? Or because you need to say it? Both? Neither? I don't know. Philip looked at her, really looked at her. I miss you. Not just the marriage, but you. Your perspective, your laugh, the way you always saw through my bullshit. I miss having you in my life. I can't be in your life the way I was before. You know that. I do. But maybe we could be something else. Not married, not romantic, but not completely severed either. Maya's getting married next year. There will be grandchildren eventually. We're going to be in each other's orbit whether we like it or not. Simone was quiet for a long moment. I'm not opposed to eventually having a civil relationship. But Philip, I need you to understand something. I don't need you anymore. I've built a life without you. I'm happy without you. If we rebuild any kind of connection, it has to be because we genuinely want to be in each other's lives, not because we're stuck together through our children. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really hear this. I am not coming back, ever. What we had is over. If you're holding on to some fantasy that I'll wake up one day and realize I made a mistake, let it go now. I didn't make a mistake. Leaving you was the best decision I've made in years." The words hurt, but they were clean, honest, final. "I'm not holding on to that fantasy anymore," Philip said quietly. "I see you with Vincent. I see how he looks at you, how you respond to him. Whatever we had, it's gone. I'm grieving that, but I'm not denying it." "Good." Simone finished her wine. "Then maybe in time we can figure out how to be something like friends. For Maya's sake, for future grandchildren. But it will take time, Philip, and it will require you continuing to do your work. I won't let you back into my life if you're still the man who cheated on me. I'm trying to become someone better. I believe you, but trying isn't the same as succeeding. Show me through your actions, not your words." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything said and unsaid hanging between them. "Can I tell you something?" Philip asked. "What?" "At Maya's party, when you were laughing with Vincent, when you told the story of how you met, I realized you never looked at me that way. Even in our good years, you never had that light in your eyes." Simone tilted her head, considering. "That's not entirely true. Early on, when we were first married, I looked at you like you hung the moon. But you're right that something changed. I think," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "I think I spent so many years managing your ego, supporting your ambitions, being what you needed me to be, that I forgot how to just be myself. With Vincent, I don't have to perform. I can just exist." "I made you perform?" "Not consciously, but yes. Every business dinner where I was the charming wife, every charity event where I networked for your benefit, every time I swallowed my own needs because yours were supposedly more urgent, I was performing. And eventually, the performance became exhausting." Philip felt like he'd been punched. "I never wanted that. I know. But impact versus intent, remember? You benefited from my performance without questioning whether I was happy giving it." She stood, gathering her clutch. "I need to get home. But Philip, thank you for being honest tonight. It helps." "Wait." He stood too. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Are you going to marry him? Vincent?" Simone smiled, and it was genuine and warm and completely unguarded. "I don't know. Maybe. We're taking things slow, figuring out what we want. But if he asked tomorrow, I'd say yes, because he makes me happy in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I hope he deserves you." "He does. That's the difference." She touched Philip's cheek briefly, a gesture that was more farewell than affection. "Take care of yourself. Do the work. Become someone you're proud of. And maybe someday we'll actually be friends." She walked toward the elevator, and Philip watched her go. This time, he didn't chase, didn't call out, didn't try to extend the conversation. He let her leave, because that's what growth looked like, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. And Simone had been right all along. Holding on to her would only hurt them both. Letting go was the kindest thing he could do. Philip sat back down, ordered one more drink, and pulled out his phone. He opened his notes app and started writing. "Things I learned tonight. 1. Simone has forgiven me, but she's moved on completely. Her happiness doesn't require my participation. 3. I need to forgive myself, not for her, but for me. 4. Love isn't enough without respect and presence. 5. Vincent makes her happy in ways I stopped doing years ago. 6. I can't undo the past, but I can build a better future. 7. Letting go is not the same as giving up." He read the list twice, then sent it to Dr. Wen with a message. "Had an unexpected conversation with Simone tonight. I think I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me." Her response came 20 minutes later. "This is real progress, Philip. You're beginning to separate your healing from her presence. That's essential. Proud of you." Philip finished his drink and went home. The penthouse was still empty, still full of memories, but it felt less suffocating. Less like a shrine to what he'd lost and more like just a place where he currently lived. He could change that. He could make different choices. He could build a life that wasn't defined by his regrets. It wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, it felt possible. Chapter 5. 6 months later. The air had that crisp quality that only October brings, the shift from summer's humidity to autumn's clarity. Philip stood in his new apartment in Brooklyn, not the Heights where Simone lived, but Park Slope, near where they'd raised Jordan and Maya decades ago. The apartment was smaller than the penthouse, but it was his in a way that marble and floor-to-ceiling windows never had been. He'd chosen the furniture himself, consulted with an interior designer, but made the final decisions, hung art that actually meant something to him rather than just filling wall space. It wasn't much, but it felt like home. He'd sold the penthouse 3 months ago. Too many ghosts, too many memories. The Hamptons house, too. After realizing he'd probably never go there again without thinking of that night, he'd found Simone's absence instead of her presence. His business was thriving. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations, bringing in a co-CEO who handled the things Philip had always done out of obligation rather than passion. Now he focused on the parts he actually enjoyed: strategy, mentorship, investment in companies trying to make genuine social impact. The foundation work had surprised him. After reconnecting with Riverside, awkward at first given his history with Simone, but easier once they saw he was serious, he discovered a passion for community investment that had been dormant for decades. The work Simone had tried to share with him all those years ago finally made sense. He was dating someone, Patricia, a divorced investment banker who'd made it clear from day one that she had zero tolerance for games or half measures. She was 51, brilliant, challenging, and absolutely unwilling to be anyone's second priority. They'd met at a conference, bonded over shared experiences of marital failure, and were taking things slow. Very slow. Philip was in no hurry to repeat past mistakes. His phone rang. Maya. "Hey, sweetheart." "Dad, are you sitting down?" "Should I be?" "I'm pregnant." Her squeal of delight made him smile. "We just found out. 8 weeks. I haven't even told Mom yet. You're the first." Philip felt tears spring to his eyes. "Oh, Maya, that's wonderful. Congratulations, honey. You're going to be a grandfather. Can you believe it?" "I really can't," he laughed, wiping his eyes. "When are you telling your mom?" "Tonight. We're having dinner at her place. Vincent's cooking, of course. Actually," she paused, "would you want to come? I know it's weird, but I want to tell both my parents together." Philip hesitated. He and Simone had managed several civil interactions over the past months, brief conversations at family events, polite texts about logistics. They weren't friends exactly, but the hostility had faded into something gentler. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose." "Dad, you're my father. You're going to be this baby's grandfather. I want you there. And honestly, I think it's time we all figured out how to be in the same room without it being weird. Then I'd be honored." 7 o'clock? And Dad? "Bring Patricia if you want. Mom's bringing Vincent. We might as well make it a full house." After they hung up, Philip sat with the news. He was going to be a grandfather. The thought filled him with joy, tinged with bittersweet awareness. Simone would be a grandmother, and they'd share this grandchild while living completely separate lives. But maybe that was okay. Maybe separate could still be connected in the ways that mattered. He called Patricia. "Want to meet my family tonight?" That was fast. We've been dating for 2 months. "My daughter just told me she's pregnant. She's inviting both me and my ex-wife to dinner to share the news. It's going to be awkward and emotional and probably a little uncomfortable." Patricia laughed. "Sounds perfect. I'll bring wine." Simone's brownstone looked different than it had 6 months ago. The garden was fuller, the autumn flowers blooming in deep oranges and reds. Through the window, Philip could see warm light, people moving in the kitchen. He and Patricia stood on the stoop, his hand poised to knock. "You okay?" Patricia asked. "Nervous?" "Good. That means you care." She squeezed his hand. "Let's go meet your family." Vincent opened the door, his expression friendly but reserved. "Philip, welcome, and you must be Patricia. Simone has told me you're brilliant and terrifying." Patricia laughed. "I like her already." Inside, the brownstone was warm and fragrant with cooking smells. Simone emerged from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a soft sweater, looking relaxed and at ease. When she saw Philip, her smile was genuine. "Philip, thank you for coming." She turned to Patricia. "And you must be the woman who's keeping him honest. I'm Simone." "Patricia, I've heard wonderful things." "I'm sure you've heard some less wonderful things, too." Simone's eyes twinkled. "Come in, please. Vincent's making bouillabaisse, which is either going to be amazing or a disaster. With French cooking, there's no middle ground. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. Maya and James were glowing, barely able to contain their news until everyone was seated with wine. When Maya finally announced the pregnancy, there were tears and hugs and toasts. Philip found himself sitting next to Simone at the table, their shoulders nearly touching, watching their daughter's joy. "We're going to be grandparents," Simone said quietly. Terrifying thought. "Completely," she smiled, "but also wonderful. Maya's going to be an amazing mother." She learned from the best. Simone glanced at him, something soft in her expression. "Thank you for saying that." Dinner was lively, conversation flowing easily. Vincent told stories about his own children, grown now, living in Paris and Montreal. Patricia shared tales from her banking career that had everyone laughing. Jordan showed up halfway through, having rushed from a late meeting, and immediately demanded all the pregnancy details. And through it all, Philip watched his family, the family he'd almost destroyed, rebuild itself in new configurations. Maya and James at the center, radiating happiness. Jordan already planning to be the favorite uncle. Simone and Vincent, comfortable together in a way that spoke of genuine partnership. Patricia fitting in seamlessly, her sharp wit welcomed rather than threatening. After dinner, while others were in the living room arguing about baby names, Philip found himself alone in the kitchen with Simone. She was loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "Here, let me help." He started rinsing plates. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes before Simone spoke. "Patricia seems wonderful." "She is. She doesn't put up with my bullshit." "Good, that's what you need." Simone closed the dishwasher. "I'm happy for you, Philip, really. I'm happy for you too. Vincent's a good man." "He is." She leaned against the counter. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When you walked in tonight, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, no regret, just neutrality. And that's when I knew I'd really moved on. That should probably hurt my feelings. But it doesn't, does it?" Philip considered. "No, it actually feels like closure, like we've both finally reached the other side of this." "Exactly." Simone dried her hands on a towel. "We're going to be grandparents together. We'll be at birthdays and holidays, family photos and milestone events. I want that to be okay for both of us." "Me too." "Then let's agree. We were married for 30 years. We built a life together. We have 2 incredible children and soon a grandchild. That's all real and valuable. But that chapter is closed. We're writing new chapters now. Separate but connected. Yes?" She held out her hand. "To new chapters?" Philip shook her hand, and the gesture felt right. Not romantic, not even particularly emotional. Just 2 people who'd shared history acknowledging that history while moving forward. "To new chapters," he agreed. Vincent appeared in the doorway. "Simone, your daughter is insisting we need to start planning a nursery immediately. I think you should intervene before she renovates their entire apartment in her head." Simone laughed. "On my way." She paused, looking back at Philip. "Thank you for being here tonight. It meant a lot to Maya. Thank you for making space for it." She left with Vincent, their hands intertwined naturally. Philip watched them go, feeling okay, not great, not terrible, just okay. And okay was a vast improvement over the devastation of a year ago. Patricia found him still standing in the kitchen. "You look contemplative. Just thinking about how much has changed. Good changes? Necessary changes, which is almost the same thing." He pulled her close. "Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for inviting me. Your family is lovely. Even your ex-wife, who I was prepared to hate on principle. She's pretty hard to hate. I noticed, which makes what you did even more idiotic." Patricia's tone was gentle but firm. "But you're not that person anymore, are you?" "I'm trying not to be." "Good, because that's the only version of you I'm interested in." The restaurant was small and intimate, tucked away on a quiet street in the West Village. Vincent had closed it for the night, transforming it into a private space for just 2. Simone sat across from him, candlelight catching in her eyes, soft music playing in the background. He'd cooked for her, a meal that was part French tradition, part innovation, entirely made with love. "This is too much," she said, but her smile told him she didn't mean it. "For you? Nothing is too much." Vincent reached across the table, taking her hand. Simone, we've been together almost a year. Every day with you has been a gift. You've taught me that life doesn't end after loss, it transforms. Vincent, please, let me finish. I'm too old to be nervous, but here I am, nervous. He laughed softly. When Marie died, I thought that was it for me. One great love in a lifetime is more than many people get. But then you walked into that community kitchen, all determination and elegance, and I thought, maybe there's room for more than one great love. Simone's eyes filled with tears. I'm not asking you to forget your past. I'm not trying to replace what you had. I'm asking if you'll build something new with me, something that's entirely ours. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. Marry me. Let's spend whatever time we have left making each other happy. Simone stared at the ring, then at Vincent, then back at the ring. You're serious. Completely. Vincent, I'm 54 years old. I've been married before. I have baggage and grown children, and you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Your age, your history, these things make you who you are. I love who you are. He waited. But if you're not ready, I understand. We can wait. I'm patient. Simone wiped her eyes, laughing through her tears. You're patient. You're asking me to marry you after less than a year. When you know, you know. And Simone, I know. She looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd appeared in her life at exactly the moment she'd needed him, who'd been patient when she was still healing, supportive when she was finding herself, present in ways Philip had stopped being years ago. Vincent wasn't perfect, but he was real, and he was here, and he saw her. Yes, she said, yes, I'll marry you. Vincent's face transformed with joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit as if it had been made for her, then came around the table to kiss her. The kiss was deep and passionate, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I love you, Vincent said. I should have said that first, but I was so nervous. I love you too. Simone cupped his face in her hands. I didn't think I'd feel this way again. Didn't think I wanted to. But Vincent, you make me happy, truly happy. Good. That's all I want, to make you happy. They finished dinner, talking about plans. Small wedding, just family and close friends. Nothing elaborate, just celebration. Maybe spring when the garden would be blooming. Later they moved to Vincent's apartment above the restaurant. It was the first time Simone had been there. She'd been cautious about moving too fast, about repeating patterns from her first marriage. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt right. His apartment was warm and lived in, full of photographs of his children and his late wife, books stacked on every surface, a kitchen that showed signs of constant use. I should warn you, Vincent said, I'm a terrible housekeeper. Marie used to despair of me. I don't need perfect, I need real. Simone walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I spent 30 years trying to maintain an image of perfection. It was exhausting. Vincent came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. No images here, just us. She turned in his arms, kissing him again. This time, the kiss deepened, became more urgent. His hands moved to her hair, her back pulling her closer. She responded in kind, decades of repression falling away. Are you sure? Vincent asked between kisses. We can wait if you're not. I'm 54 years old, Simone said firmly. I don't want to wait. I've waited long enough. They moved to his bedroom, hands exploring, clothes falling away. Vincent was gentle but not timid, confident in his desire for her. He took his time, treating her body like something precious, finding the places that made her gasp, responding to her touch with his own. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home and discovering something new all at once. The rhythm between them was natural, unforced, two people who genuinely wanted to give each other pleasure. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Simone's head on Vincent's chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. That was, she started. Magnifique, Vincent finished. She laughed. I was going to say wonderful, but magnifique works too. We'll have to practice, make sure we get it right. How much practice are we talking? Oh, years, many, many years. Simone lifted her head to look at him. I can work with that. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the engagement ring catching the light from the street below. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Simone felt completely at peace. She'd been broken, she'd rebuilt herself, and now she was building something new, not to fix what had been damaged, but to create something entirely different, something that was wholly, completely hers. The wedding was small and perfect, Simone's garden in full bloom, 30 guests seated on folding chairs, Jordan officiating because he'd gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Maya was radiant and very pregnant, 7 months due in August. James kept a protective hand on the small of her back. Philip sat in the third row with Patricia, who squeezed his hand when Simone appeared at the garden entrance. She wore a simple cream dress, her locks adorned with small white flowers. She looked luminous, ageless, completely herself. Vincent stood at the makeshift altar, looking at her like she was the only person in the world, which, for him, she was. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. Jordan read from Rumi, something about lovers meeting after hard winters. Gabby read Maya Angelou. Vincent's daughter sang in French, her voice pure and lovely. When Jordan pronounced them married, the garden erupted in applause. Vincent kissed Simone thoroughly, making several guests whistle and laugh. At the reception, catered by Vincent's restaurant naturally, Philip found himself sitting at a table with Patricia, watching Simone and Vincent dance their first dance to Ella Fitzgerald. "She looks happy," Patricia observed. "She is." "And you? Are you okay with all this?" Philip considered. "I'm genuinely happy for her. That's growth, right?" "That's evolution." Patricia leaned her head on his shoulder. "You've come a long way." "We both have." Philip kissed her temple. "Thank you for being patient with me." "Thank you for being worth the patience." Later, when the party had mellowed into the golden hour of evening, Philip found himself next to Simone as they both stood by the dessert table. "Beautiful wedding," he said. "Thank you. It's everything I wanted. Simple, genuine, surrounded by people who matter." "I'm glad you found him. Found this." Simone looked at him with clear eyes. "I'm glad you found your way too. Patricia's good for you." "She is. She doesn't let me slide on anything." "Good." Simone selected a small chocolate tart. "Philip, can I say something that might be weird?" "Of course." "I don't regret our marriage. Even with how it ended, I don't regret the years we had. We made beautiful children. We built a life. And when it stopped working, we both found the courage to choose differently. That's not failure. That's growth." Philip felt something unknot in his chest, a tension he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. "Thank you for saying that. I've spent the last year treating our marriage like it was a mistake, like those 30 years were wasted. But you're right. They weren't wasted. They just, ended." "Exactly." She touched his arm briefly. "We're going to be in each other's lives forever because of our children. I want that to be okay. Actually okay, not just politely tolerated." "Me too." "Then let's agree. We were important to each other once. We're different people now, and that's allowed." Vincent approached, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Sorry to interrupt, but your wife needs to toast her own wedding." He handed Simone a glass, nodded politely to Philip. "Thank you for being here. It means something to Simone." "Thank you for making her happy," Vincent smiled. "That's the easy part. She makes herself happy. I just get to watch." They walked away together, Simone's hand in Vincent's, toward the small group gathering for toasts. Philip watched them go, feeling a complicated tangle of emotions that somehow resolved into something simple. Peace. Patricia appeared at his side with cake. "Penny for your thoughts?" "Just thinking about endings and beginnings, how they're not always opposite things." "Heavy thoughts for a wedding?" "Maybe, but also hopeful ones." He accepted the cake. "Ready to dance?" "With you?" "Always." They moved to the makeshift dance floor, joining other couples swaying to the music. Across the garden, Philip could see Maya laughing with Jordan, both of them teasing Vincent about something. Simone stood slightly apart, watching her new husband with her children, her face glowing with happiness. She caught Philip's eye and raised her champagne glass in a small toast. He raised his own in return, not to what they'd had, but to what they'd both found. The music played on. The summer evening stretched long and golden, and in that garden in Brooklyn, Two families that had once been one celebrated new chapters, new loves, and the hard-won wisdom that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them go. Philip had let Simone go, and in doing so, he'd finally found himself. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything.